The Not Most People podcast is for those who despise mediocrity, reject the status quo, and challenge conventional wisdom. Join host Bradley Roth and discover what separates the winners, outliers, and standouts from most people.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Not Most People podcast. We got a great guest for you here today, and his name is Mike Fallat. Did I say that right?
Yeah, you did.
All right. And he has created the #1 book creation service for entrepreneurs called Dreamstarter Publishing. He has now done over 200 best-selling books. And he also has a new book out called Inner Circle, What He Learned from Interviewing Millionaires. And he also has another company called Rockstar's Dream Magazine, which has its 5th issue coming out this month. So he's got a lot of awesome stuff going on. I've been following this guy on Instagram for a bit. We kind of got to know each other virtually through a mutual group that we're in called the Arete Syndicate. And I've just really loved his content. And he clearly embodies what I consider to be not most people. So excited to get into it. And I'm just going to start right off with a question, basically looking to get a little bit of background. You know, you have this publishing company, you're doing pretty well for yourself now, but I was hoping you could tell us a little bit about how you kind of got to this point, how you became an entrepreneur, a publisher. You know, I'm guessing all that stuff didn't really just happen overnight.
Love the intro. Love the subject of this podcast.
So
thank you very much for having me on, man. Not most people. My God, isn't that, it's a great just thing to be a part of. Interview people who are not doing what the average person is. So thank you so much for that, man. But it all started, I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And people think that since I write a lot of books, I have a team of ghostwriters, they think that I'm just like this guy who loves books and I grew up reading and writing my whole life. It couldn't be further from that. I mean, I hated reading. I hated to write. I didn't do any of that stuff. I went to school in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, BC student. I hated school more than anything. I thought I was gonna be a professional hockey player. I'm only 5'7", so that I struggled in that a little bit, but I was pretty good. And then I wanted to be in the Navy. I wanted to be a Navy SEAL guy. So I'm 18 years old and I don't know what to do with my life. And I got a job at a convenience store. And I saw this guy who owned the convenience store, who drove really nice cars and dated really pretty girls, and he had an awesome house. And I'm like, man, what's this guy do? Like, oh, he's an entrepreneur. And I really didn't know what that meant at the time. I'm like, oh, he just owns the convenience store. Then when you get to know this person, you find out he owns convenience stores and housing and apartment complexes and restaurants. And you're like, ooh, this is pretty cool. I want to be this. So he showed a little bit of like interest in me, like, cause he knew that I was like a hard worker. And I remember he came to me one day and he goes, listen, there's all kinds of talk at the office. He had like 300 employees all over.
Do you mind if I ask real quick, how old were you when you discovered this guy?
I was I was really 16 years old. Okay. I didn't really get to know him until I was like 17 or 18, I guess.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it's about 18 years old is whenever it really became close with him. But he came to me one day, he goes, hey, everybody at the office is saying that you're not cashing your paychecks. Is this true? What's going on? You're screwing up books if this is true. I'm like, yeah, I haven't cashed my paycheck in months, because he'd send me the paychecks and I'd have them all sitting in my little safe underneath my bed. And it was over $5,000. He's like, what are you doing with $5,000? You're this young kid. I'm like, if I can't touch it, I can't spend it. And he's like, first off, that's backwards thinking. You need to invest it. And now that I know that you're serious about money, let me start to show you the game here, mutual funds and investments. And he kind of took me under the wing. Now, I didn't care too much about investments, mutual funds. I really didn't get it, but he did give me a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And there I was, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad whenever I got around to it, I guess in 19, 20 years old. And that's what changed my life. That's whenever I said, okay, even though I'm going to college and all that, I now know what I want to do with the rest of my life is be an entrepreneur. So long story short, I graduated from school, 23 years old. I got my real estate license, and then I bought a 4-unit building right away. I only had a little bit of money, but I put 3% down, but as my own agent, I got 3% back. So there I was, I had this $160,000 property for no money, and it's cash flowing $500 a month.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. What do I do now? So now it's time to venture out and start businesses, like startups. So that's my real passion, startup businesses. And so I started starting 1, 2, 3, 4 startups, all failures, major mistakes, going into severe debt. Even though I had this 4-unit building, I'm thinking I'm this successful entrepreneur.
Uh-huh.
I really didn't start anything that was mine. You know, real estate's pretty easy. Okay. People need a house. They pay the money. It's guaranteed. People need to spend money to stay somewhere, but starting a business, very different. So 4 startup failures, major mistakes. I look like an idiot in front of friends and family and everybody. And they're like, oh, he's just a loser who has startups. My 5th one succeeded. And that was called Doggy Surprise, which was a direct-to-home dog product service. Very similar to BarkBox. Have you ever heard of BarkBox?
I have, yeah.
So it's very similar to that. It was a little bit more on a grander scale, and it was like bigger stuff rather than the little stuff. And I played back and forth. But anyway, it made money. And here I was at home shows singing songs with my guitar. And people were coming to me and they said, you started a business from nothing. You're making money. Can you tell me what you did? And I'm like, oh, well, my first 4 failures taught me about vision, simplicity, and demand. And they're like, oh, can you just like coach me a little bit? I'm like, yeah, sure. So then all I did was I wrote that down in my book or in a Word document. And I'm like, I can turn this into a book here called Dreamstarter. This is going to be really cool. So here I am trying to get speaking gigs and attention. Nobody cares about me online. And there I was, still a corporate employee on the side. And so whenever Doggy Surprise started to make some money, I started saying, hey, I'm going to start focusing more on the Doggy Surprise. Well, they had a big problem with that. And it turned into this big legal battle because they didn't want me leaving anywhere and going anywhere else. And it was a big nightmare. So my hatred for the corporate world really started to get strong. Forced me to say, okay, well, I'm going all in on my business. Now, here I was trying to grow Doggy Surprise. I just went through this court battle with corporation. I basically have to find money to pay off attorneys for that. So I'm really at zero, severely in debt. And then I'm thinking to myself, well, I do have this idea for this book that taught me everything to help this Doggy Surprise kind of get off the ground and make me $40,000. I could have lived off of that. So I wrote the book. And all of a sudden, people started asking me to come speak at their school and getting attention online. And then it hit me. The book is the key to get attention. And so I started helping other people come to me and say, hey, not only can you help people start businesses, but write books. And I said, hey, you over there, you want a book? I'll do it for $2,000. I'll do the whole book for you. And these are successful people who do pretty well in direct marketing or, real estate or whatever. So they started paying me to do it. Now, all of a sudden, I started writing books for people from home. And there I was. And now I'm thinking to myself, how do I get back? How can I make more money than at this corporation and everything? So I really poured it on. And then all of a sudden, we've done over 223 books. I have a team of writers now. I have a team that does most of the stuff. I do the interview still. And then, you meet a lot of great people. Now you do business with them outside of just books, whether it's investing in mobile home parks or, having them a part of a magazine that I started, or you create a group of people who think like you and you can do great things like Mike's Inner Circle. It's just amazing what happens when you learn from one business, you can apply it to many. But what's great about it more than anything else, I think, are the alliances that you create along the way.
Yeah, for sure. That was awesome. A lot of parts of that story that I can really resonate with. That almost felt like I was telling
the corporate world aspect, that the hatred inside you of them trying to control you where you go, and you're not even hurting them, but they want you to have your mind on them. But you're like, hey, I got my own life. I got my own dreams. No. We're paying you. You can't do any of that. Is that what you mean?
A bit. I actually, I kind of had that revelation a little bit before I got into the corporate side, but especially what you were saying growing up, BC student, thought I was going to be, an athlete. That was my identity, right? Stuff like that. And then kind of, you get into the real world and you start to see, these people are doing what I want. How do I do that? Right. And then I wanted to ask you, you said it took your 5th startup or business to really be what you call a success, right?
Yeah. And by the way, in the eyes of most entrepreneurs, it wasn't a success. In my eyes, it was, because it made money. That's what I classify as a success. Yes.
Gotcha. So that was kind of like when you broke through, per se, right, for yourself mentally. So I I'm just wondering, during those first 4 startups, was there ever like that time where you're like, oh, I think I'm about ready to throw in the towel? Or were you always like, you know what, I'm just going to keep going and going and going until something hits?
I don't think there was ever a time of I'm going to give up. There was a time where, you know, you're looking at your bank account and you're looking at everybody around you having like a normal life, and
Mm-hmm.
and you're questioning yourself, like, I could really just alleviate this pain. I could just alleviate this pain and go get a job. I could. And, you know, I don't think it ever crossed my mind to say like I'm giving up, because I've already done so much. I mean, sacrificed my health, you know, taking myself off of health insurance, screwing up my ankle, never going to the doctors, losing tons of weight, only eating eggs and bananas for like 2 years straight. I mean, there was so involved already that there was no turning back. Like there was no way I would say, okay, now it's time to give up. So like, I think I risked so much early on that I would feel like a complete idiot in front of everyone. Like I could never stick my neck up or say anything ever again, because then I was a total failure. Like 4 failures, you find out from really successful multimillionaires that I work with, they all had a couple failures. Like that's the test. Like can you screw up and go into debt and then look in the mirror and say, let's go at it again? Like it's almost like a test that everybody has to run through at one point in their life. But I will say that there was a moment, if there's anything that sticks out that says like, oh my God, this was not a breaking point, but I remember being in tears of like, I'm doing so much right and there is still nothing happening. I remember looking at the, you know, I'm pretty religious now, you know, I've become more religious over time because I've seen God play a factor in everything. And I see how he worked in my life. So I remember there was a time where even with my book company, I was still struggling to get clients. You know, you get 2 or 3 clients under your belt and you're like, I'm doing really well and all that. And then it goes into a stall. And this stall period is another test. So like every business, even if it's doing well, 2 months from now, it might not be. So you have to get creative and do crazy things. But there was a time where it stalled for a little bit. And I remember thinking to myself, what else do I need to do? I'm doing everything. I don't know if you're a big Art Williams fan, but he has a quote out there that says, do all you can. And sometimes all you can is good enough. And so I'm doing everything I can, working up at 4 a.m, staying up till midnight, social media craziness, but still it's not enough. And all of a sudden there's a moment where you're like, all right, God, send me a sign here. Am I supposed to be doing this business? Is this the one? And, you know, you pray and all that stuff. And the 2 hours later is whenever I got a call from a guy. He's like, I see you just do best-selling books. I'm in. Where do I send the invoice? It was like such a lay down. I've never seen it happen in my life before. And I'm like, okay, this is it. And from that day forward, I swear to God, it's sort of like, I know if something is going to be difficult, I don't know what it is, but I just feel like, hey, there's the ability to problem solve when you really need to. Can you close a deal when you really need to? Can you create that alliance when you really need to? It's sort of like you just build up that arsenal, and it's maybe thick skin, but it's also belief in yourself. So it's just a growing process that never ends. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I just risked more money to go on a one-day trip on a yacht for $5,000. Now, I'm telling you, even if you're doing well, to spend $5,000 for a couple hours of your life, it still was like, is this the right thing? But there's a point where you're like, yep, it is. There's still that doubt, a little bit of like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm doing this. And then you find out from millionaires, like the NMP mentality that you have in this podcast, you find out these millionaires are spending 100 grand for one meeting. Like, think about how insane you have to be in the average person's life to say, I'm going to spend 100 grand to be in this one meeting once a year. That's what it is. These people do, by the way.
Oh yeah.
And then you're like, okay, if you're doing that and you're trying to level up and you have $50 million, then guess what? I got to take some shots. You know, that's it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I mean, the reason I asked you that question is because I think most people from like looking from the outside, they see these success stories, right? And they're like, oh, you know, they probably, you know, got lucky, or they were
lucky.
you know,
I love that phrase.
right.
Yeah.
if you want to make an entrepreneur's blood boil, tell them they got lucky, right? So,
Oh my God. Yeah,
yeah.
that is the worst. I mean, you get to a point where you're like, I'm used to it, but you're
Uh-huh.
right. Isn't that the one? It's like, oh, you don't know what I went through. You don't even get
Yeah.
it.
You just discounted all the work and the hardships and stuff. But that's the other thing too, is that what I found is everyone who's kind of made it big like that, they all have a similar story to yours, where like they went through a lot of stuff that 95% of people would quit, a month into that versus sticking it out for years. So
Mhm.
I always love kind of hearing that hardship to triumph story that everyone has, right? So
It's not all sunshine and rainbows. It's not all easy. When I started a business, the last thing I wanted to do was become a funnel expert and a Google Ads expert. And the last thing I wanted to do was understand certain pieces of email marketing. And I don't care about any of that stuff, but it's like, all right, you gotta learn it. And you're gonna screw up a bunch, and then it's gonna bring you down mentally. And then, there's going to be days where you're like, everything's going perfect. It's just amazing. And then they're going to hit a brick wall and you're like, man, that's really tough. But what would my hero do? What would they do? Oh, okay. They would figure out this. And then, it's just ride, but the ride is so much fun, man. As soon as you get into that groove and you start to have wins under your belt and you start to realize you could overcome a lot, and you're still here doing it years later, it's sort of like, all right, I don't know what's going to happen this year, but we're going to figure it out. It's going to be a lot of fun.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's fun to look back and be like, oh man, like this thing that just came up, like it's, just another day, but like a couple of years ago would have totally derailed me. Right. So
What happened, the pandemic March of last year, 5 years prior, I would have been done. I don't even know how I would have survived. Nobody was spending money with books for 4 months. So like, I had to get really creative and all that. But it was almost like I see opportunity, and maybe this is it. Those hard days teach you not only resourcefulness, but how to spot opportunity. And you maybe think yourself, oh, I can take this and apply it over here and do this. You'll never get to that point unless you hit that breaking point or hit that ground zero, where it's like you're totally pushed down and say, okay, try to hunt your own food for a month. So you can only learn those skills when you're put in that situation. And since 4 or 5 years of doing all kinds of insane stuff, when the pandemic happened, man, I just spotted an opportunity and capitalized on it. And then another opportunity. So you almost see things as like, it's not as bad. And maybe problems get more diminished. And those people who are doing really big things, not most people, those millionaires, they have really big problems. They're looking at insane stuff that when I hear it is like, oh my God, that's amazing. But to them, right, they work their way up. It's not like you go from here to there. It's you work your way up to those problems. And those are good problems to have when you're at that level.
100%. Yeah. I always, when people have trouble kind of understanding that, I always compare it to something physical that's they can grasp, right? So like, it's just like going to the gym, right? Like you say, you've been training for, a couple of years. Now you're running Ironmans, now you can handle that stuff every day. Whereas like, back before, you'd built up to it, you'd get crushed. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I find it an easy way to kind of understand that concept for people. But I want to ask
break down your muscles. You break down your muscles just
exactly.
like your mind. Same deal.
Yep. Build your brain just like your muscles. So I want to ask you a question more specifically about kind of book publishing, right? Because it's something that is kind of on the rise right now. A lot of people want to publish their own books. And I'm sure you know the stats better than me, but I know it's some crazy percentage. The vast majority of people who publish books on Amazon sell less than like 100 or 1,000 copies, right? That most of them flop. So what is it from either a writing standpoint or a publishing standpoint that kind of separates, that top few percentage of books that kind of take off and do well, those bestsellers, from everyone else who kind of gets stuck with that?
Great question. There's a couple answers I can give you there. But what I will tell you is that 80% of people on this planet have said at one time or another in their life, I want to write a book. Okay. 80%. That's a lot of people. So, but only 95% of those people ever, or 95% of those people never finish one. So a bunch of those people start a book, they put a couple chapters down, and only about 3 to 7, so on the average 5% of people actually finish their book. So what does that mean? So 5% of people that all start their books finish it, and then they put it up on Amazon. Now, the ones who do really well have a game plan with it. The other people, and there's about 700,000 every year uploaded to Amazon. That's the only stat that I know with Amazon. So
Gotcha.
700,000 every year. I think it's going up every year. But
I'm sure it must be. Yeah.
yeah. So 700,000, let's just say that. The people who do the best are the ones who have a massive game plan. Now, I do not think it has to do with content. I really don't think so. I've heard stats or figures and all that stuff, but people always break it down that it's 90% marketing, 10% content. And so what I attribute success to is not really Amazon sales. I attribute success to how many people get your book. Has it developed your brand? Has it elevated your name? Has it increased opportunities? So the person that I know who does the best on Amazon of our clients, 220 clients, does he make the most money? And you'll find out the people who do use their books the right way, getting on podcasts, using as a lead gen tool, creating courses, creating groups, elevating their brand high enough where they can group. Tony Watley, for example, owns 365 Driven. He did really well on Amazon. And so when I say really well, let's just say he sold 1,000 copies in week 1. Maybe he sells 500 every month or so, like that. He had a massive following before. People know his name. He will still make way more money from his coaching, from his other businesses than ever on Amazon. So like sales on Amazon to me do not really equate success to me. So like I look at success on Amazon, get a lot of reviews. It looks fantastic, all this stuff. But unless you're doing it in a way like the Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book that changed my life, where you create the book and you get a lot of sales, and then you create the events. And now you have the Rich Dad Poor Dad game. And now you have multiple books, and everybody and anybody knows Robert Kiyosaki. That's the game. That's success to me. So what makes people successful is the end game strategy. If you have an idea, and this is what I ask every one of our clients, if you're sitting down and you're looking at your business, where do you see most of the money coming in a year from now? And they'll say, oh, I want to do this, this, and this. And I say, okay, great. Now build the book around that in some aspect. And here's why. It becomes a foundational piece. It becomes an asset. You know exactly how you're going to use it. Oh, I'm going to put together an event. Great. What's the event going to be called? 365 Driven. This. Great. So now your book is how to become 365 driven all the time, or today, something like that. So when the book is done, now you say, everybody, go to my website. I'll give you a free copy, or buy it, or I'll just pay for shipping, whatever that it involves. And now you have this book that gets you to the next level. So when you start to put the course out, people are going to say, that's the guy that wrote the best-selling book. I'll explain best-selling here in a second, but that's the guy that wrote the best-selling book on business, finance, marketing, sales. So if you want to become the sales guru, you write a book about it first, and then you promote it like crazy. Now you have this breadcrumb that leads back. So eventually 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road, 4 years ago, I wrote the best-selling book on sales. So now it just snowballs. People invite you on their podcast. You get interviews. You use it as a lead magnet. You start giving it away. It's a business card on steroids. Breadcrumb all across. So therefore, you have these walls of defense. Next, becoming an Amazon bestseller can be done in a heartbeat. Let me explain this for you guys out there. People think it's a scam. Amazon has hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of categories. It's the free market. And all you're trying to do is beat a certain group of people on a certain day. You can break it up into, let's just say there's 700,000 copies on Amazon, right? There's millions and millions and millions. But you don't go against all 700,000. You go against the different groups. The people who are in certain groups, sometimes there's low demand on Tuesdays at 9 a.m. So what do? You find a low demand category that's still somewhat relevant to your book. And you say, hey, everybody, friends, family, buy my book for 99 cents on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. And Amazon says, okay, we have 20 sales coming through. Well, 20 sales is more than the number one seller in this category. Boom, you go to number one. Then you have momentum behind you. Amazon's trying to make money off you. This is the game. You understand Amazon doesn't want you to fail. They want you to succeed. So what you have now is some momentum. Now you can move your move your book from category to category and get eyeballs on your book. So now maybe a lot of people in Australia or Canada start to see your book as number one, or they get the email, hey, you bought a Robert Kiyosaki book. You might like a Bradley Roth book. Okay. Now you start to get the momentum and it snowballs. Great. You ask friends and family to leave a review. It's like helium in a balloon. All of a sudden it stays relevant for a very long time. Hey, you got a lot of sales on Amazon. You might make some money. You get about 50% of whatever you sell it for on Amazon. Royalties taken out after that. But now you have all these reviews, testimonials, all this stuff that you can use for your advantage somewhere else. And then you start to apply that to, hey, I was on Amazon bestseller. Would you like to have me on your podcast? Here's my best-selling book. You put the logo on it. You start to talk about it. You promote it like crazy. Promote. And going back to the NMP philosophy, the great ones, the ones who are doing the best, they never stop promoting. So if you can just adopt that philosophy, we just keep promoting what you've done, what you're working on, and where you're going, you're going to get a lot more attention, and attention equals money. So that's what I have to say about that one right there. I hope I answered your question.
Love it. Yeah. I was just sitting back and just absorbing all those knowledge bombs right there. I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy that inside scoop. Right. And I think it's like what you said, a lot of people with books, just like with business, they think, oh, like I'll write it or I'll build it and they will come. And like, that's it, game over. And they don't see that full big picture. Right. I mean, if you're like, an actual like New York Times bestselling author, that's one thing, right? But unless that's you, unless you have that huge, following or previous success, that's the way you do it.
You got to create it. Yeah. You got to manufacture your own success. Mm-hmm. And glad you brought that up. New York Times are still game. There's still a strategy. This is not a shot in the dark. People who are successful, there is no like lottery ticket. If you find out some of the dirty details of even the New York Times bestseller, it's all based off of publishers. Publishers will force the bestseller on a book to increase the relevance, because studies show that if it's an Amazon bestseller, it sells more. If it's a New York Times bestseller, there's more value to it. People buy it more. So if it's still at that point, there's a game behind it. And Penguin Publishing will do the exact same thing we're doing, just on a way higher scale. They'll say, hey, everybody at Barnes & Noble's, buy this, or Barnes & Noble's, satellite stores, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, buy this book on this day. Guess what that does? It's automatically, it's manufacturing numbers, creating that number, and then they report that number to New York Times and says number one. And so that's success. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how it's always been done. But if you're just starting out and you're just beginning this journey, you got to manufacture your own success before someone even gives you a second look. That's it.
100%. Yeah. Those guys, at that level, they can hack the algorithm, so to say, right?
Right. If you have that much pull, and they have a lot of pull, these big publishers, because they have access to a lot of people and a lot of networks, then, it's just part of the game. You just gotta, and people always say, oh, that's not how it's done. If you do enough research, you'll find out the best-selling book in the world that's self-published will not make the list on New York Times. It's crazy like that.
Makes sense. Yeah. I'm guessing Dreamstars will be there one day, right?
Yeah, we've worked with a few people that's tried big money to get on that New York Times bestseller list, and they don't stand a chance unless it's one of like the top 6 publishing companies. But we'll get there someday for sure.
Awesome,
you always keep striving.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you about your book, or actually before we get into that, I know you're a big believer in joining communities, right? Like, especially of like-minded people who are playing on a high level. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that, because I know my belief is that carefully selecting, upgrading your peer group is one of the biggest, most powerful things you can do to get to where you want. And it's one of those things that I think most people who aren't where they want to be are kind of, they look around and they're still around the same people they were with like in high school and growing up. And, so I was wondering if you could talk about that a little bit, because obviously it's helped you a lot, right?
It's everything. If you want to break it down to why I've had success in the past 2 years, 3 years, it's because of my circle. It's what spawned the idea inner circle. And so memberships, programs that you're talking about, masterminds, however you want to look at it. If you are around the same people you were 5, 7, 10 years ago, there's something wrong there. And the reason why is because we've all heard the same phrase where you are the product of the 5 people you hang around. Les Brown says, if he met you and he knew your friends and your closest 5 people, he could ballpark your income within $2,000. And I don't know how close that is, but think about how crazy that is. It is so true. You show me 4 millionaires, and the person who hangs out with those 4 millionaires will eventually be a millionaire. It's the law of, you want to call it the proximity of power. That's in my book. I talk about the proximity of power. People who figured out this game realize that money is energy. Success is energy. You just get around people who are possessing it in some aspect. It rubs off on you. You start to think like them. You start to behave like them. You start to decide and problem solve like them. So what I did, and I didn't believe in it at first. I really didn't. I tried to do everything on my own. And then you realize there are certain key people that are just really good. They're just really solid individuals. And, they make decisions. I remember getting a call from someone, you find out, they do pretty well, and you don't believe everything until you do business with them. So whenever you get on a call, and my book prices were $7,500 at the time, I'd get on a call and I say, hey, you look like you're doing pretty well. We do this, and this, and $7,500. Before the conversation's over, I have $7,500 in my bank account. So these people make fast decisions. And so you start to kind of latch on, not to everybody, but to people who are like, okay, this is real. This person's real. And there's no fake stuff. They're not driving around and lease cars or anything. This is a real person. So what is this person doing? And then I have the ability, and you have the ability as a podcast host, to interview them and get to know them on a deeper level. And you find out that every single one of them has paid for some type of access or some type of membership into some program. It could be Arete. It could be 365 driven. 2 I recommend, by the way. One's $400 a month. One's $365 a year. There are bigger ones that are masterminds, like the Mark Evans DM family. You're paying at least $35,000 a year to be a part of it. But guess what? Anybody in that room? Deal makers, just killers in the game. They're just ready to make moves. They want to work with people like them. I've done a few other ones, but go into Tim Brotz's, I'm part of his legacy boardroom, which is $1,000 a month. And you're thinking to yourself, what are you going to get out of it? Well, guess what? I mean, I have a business. If you don't have a business, maybe you shouldn't do it. But when you have a business that makes money based off of working with people or access to opportunities, you want to be around people who are committed, people who are put their money where their mouth is, the people who show others that I'm willing to put my, and remember, money is energy. I'm willing to put my energy, my focus here. That's what this group means to me. And so all the people in that group are like, well, half the boxes already checked off on my checklist of like, all right, I know you think like me because the person who put this together thinks like this. And we all have the same core values. It's a no-brainer that we should really be working together. And that's what happened to me is the Arete. You're part of it too. These people, you're already somewhat more committed than the average person. And there's already that common ground. Like, oh, you're one of us. I'm one of you. Let's do some damage together. Let's have some fun. So I think that is the major piece of, I never spent, I don't spend money on ads yet. I really don't. It's all about relationships. Build relationships with the right people. Be valuable to valuable people, and good things come your way. And then all of a sudden, it's not just about business, but it's overall life. You start to see that how to take your money and get money to work for you. It has nothing to do with your business. It has to do with money. And then you start to see a common trend of like religion and spirituality and how people think and how people treat each other and what they say online. And it's just amazing what comes from being around people who are just leagues above you. This isn't just people who are like, doing the same thing as you. There could be, but when you are paying money, that's where your attention goes. That's where your effort goes. And the good ones, they take notice of this. So the last thing I will say about this, this key piece that everybody should apply is that solid people, if you look at them and you really analyze their life, they are only surrounded by solid people. Their circle is solid. They don't let shit in, you know, they understand that one bad apple can screw it all up. And so maybe they do have these barriers up, but once you're in, you're part of that family and you're part of that group. And so strong people have strong people around them. And that's why you don't want to screw up these relationships. And by paying to be a part of certain ones, they're not all good, by the way, but you find people who you look up to and you're like, I like this person. I like how they do business. I know everything there is that I could know about them. And I like everything I'm seeing. And I could see myself adopting those philosophies. But if it's someone that, you can meet those individuals that don't share the same core values and it's all fake and it doesn't feel good and they're always swearing, maybe, I don't know. You just know right away that that's not who you want to become. And so you put the guard up and say, that's not it. Make decisions fast. You get around people that you do look up to, and then you learn from them. And maybe you don't stay there forever. You just keep, the world's pretty big. Find people. You always just keep leveling up. And once you hit a certain level, you level up more and you level up more. So it pushes you.
Exactly. Yeah. I think, success is contagious, and so is mediocrity, and so is failure. Right. So I know for me, $400 a month to be in Arte was a major stretch at that time. But, I was like getting access to, a couple thousand other very like-minded, high-level entrepreneurs, and then getting led by Ed and Andy, who are playing at a super high level. It's a steal at $400 a month. Right. So I can't even describe all the amazing connections I've made and stuff. But what's mind-boggling to me these days is there's still so many people out there who they hear something like that and they're like, that's crazy. Like, that's so much money. And I'm like, well, you had no hesitation dropping high 5-6 figures to go to college and, do all that, we won't even get started on that topic, because that's a whole nother episode.
Talk for days on that. I'm with you. Oh man,
we could do that later. But then I'm like, you probably spent $400 at the bar drinking with your buddies this past month, right? And so, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned. And then I wanted to piggyback on that. That's obviously one trend that you've seen of very successful people, right? And something that's worked for you. But in your book, which is your new book, right, which is Inner Circle,
yep.
What I Learned from Interviewing Millionaires, I'm guessing that there were some other common patterns you picked up on that those millionaires really did differently than most people that kind of, led them there. They didn't just all happen to be millionaires by chance, right?
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot. This is all the commonalities. And I'm not saying that there's a millionaire out there who doesn't abide by this. It's what I've seen. This is me. I get to sit down with them for 4 hours and I get to work with them back and forth, edits, cover design, all. So it's a real relationship of back and forth. What I've seen from the ones who are the real deal, there's a couple of them. All right. Let me just list off a few just so you guys can get an idea. The proximity of power is in there. So they all abide by it. There is no, they did it on their own. No, they all have done something to get around high level individuals. They all have this thing called the killing stroke. That's what I define it as. It's, can you make a sale when you need to? Can you pull the trigger when you need to? Can you make a decision fast when you really need to? And there are those people who just can't do it. They can't get people to say yes. They can't lead people. They can't do it. There's something about that thing I call the killing stroke. And it's something that, you adopt and you get very fast when your back is up against a wall. The people who are never put in that situation, I don't think ever get it. So there's that. A couple other things I've learned is that they understand casualties. Okay. Casualties are things that everybody tries to stay away from. Bad credit scores. They don't want to burn bridges. They don't want to piss off their family or friends and all that. Everybody that I've met is totally cool with casualties as long as it's the greater good. Their vision lives on, their family's taken care of, they're able to grow their business, they're able to solve a problem. Their credit scores can always be fixed. Relationships are always going to go down the tubes when you start to transition. We talked about this before we even got on the podcast, but there are people out there who are just okay with being themselves. And they understand that people who don't think like that might look at them and say, oh my God, that's a disgusting human being. Why do they only care about making money. Oh my God, they have $1 million. Why are they trying to make 5 million? Blah, blah, blah. They understand that those people are not in their circle, not a part of their life, can't decide for anything when they're alone. They're okay with that. They're okay with businesses failing. There are casualties where your greatest idea you think will just not work. It could be because of the timing, it could be the market or whatever. Some ideas fail. They could cut ties. And like I said, finances, you could lose $100,000 or whatever. You always know that there's a way to bring it back. There is no today's the last day. So casualties is another big thing.
Wow, I love that. That's one I really haven't heard put that way before. And I feel like I read and I study a lot of these successful people, right? And hear these trends, proximity, I hear all the time, right? And stuff like that. But the casualties one, I understand that concept, but I never heard it put quite that way. So that's very interesting. And I would say if you guys want to hear some more inside scoops like that, check out his new book, right? Inner Circle.
Yeah. I got one more. We don't have to run yet.
Oh, you got one more good one. Yeah. Let's hear it.
So stacking wins. You probably heard this too, but there are people out there that will stack wins. And what that means is, okay, let's just say you have a really shitty day. I've found out from all these other people, the way to get over any shitty situation is you stack another win right away. It could be the fastest win. It could be anything that's like a big bonus. This could mean, okay, it doesn't have to be business related. Okay. If you have a really bad day, you basically say, okay, well, I just had a really bad day. Let me stack up 5 meetings for tomorrow or the day after. What this does is it allows you to focus on the next battle or something else that's going to be progressive. If you have a really shitty day, convert this negative energy into something positive, or convert yourself to take action. And it could be to reach out to people on social media that you didn't want to talk to. It could be trying to push people towards the next step in the sales process. If you didn't really want to, you do something that forces you to kind of go outside of your comfort zone because you're already feeling like shit. Now you got to push through that and break through to a win. And this could be waking up the next day. It could be going to the gym early. It could be paying off a bill. It could be anything to get your mind out of the mentality that you just lost. So you stack wins. And then this also kind of does something to your brain where it gets you out of the funk that you're a loser and forces you into a winner. Hey, I just cleaned my apartment. That's a win. I just made my bed. That's a win. I just went for a run. That's a win. I got 3 wins in my day and it's only 9 a.m. Okay, I ate right. That's another win. Oh, I made 3 calls. 1 signed up for an actual meeting. That's another win. So like you stack wins and you start to, you can take every loss and then eventually spin it into multiple wins. It forces you to do that. So I've seen that in many successful individuals where they never stay in a funk long enough. They always take action on a big loss, and it yields great results. So those are the 3 that I would say. And you're right though, man. You do hear about the proximity of power. You hear about this thing called purpose, right? This is all the stuff that I talk about. If you don't have a purpose, if you're just kind of, I just want to make money, blah, 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 you're going to fail. You don't have this strong purpose, this backbone to say, you know what, the reason why I get on social media and I stand up for myself is I got a freaking purpose. And I know the people who don't have a purpose would most likely just back down and go away and you never see them again. But the people who have a strong will purpose, they're going to be there. So there's a couple other ones that you've probably heard, but those are the 3, 4 ones that I recommend even just on this quick podcast. Understand casualties, proximity of power, you stack wins, and make sure you abide by your purpose and good shit happens.
For sure. Yeah. I think the stacking wins, a good example of that a lot of people know is 75 hard, right? So it's like, yeah, which I'm doing a little bit of right now. I've done in the past. And, even if your business is, not having a great day or, whatever's going on, you still did 2 workouts. You could still look in the mirror and said, I accomplished something today. Right. So that's super powerful. And I want to ask you before we hop off here, what do the words "not most people" mean to you? What do you think of when you hear those words?
Not most people. Oh man, what does it make me think of? I would have to say it makes me think of, my circle now. Like it's so funny that when I think of people I'm really close to now, like the friends I talk to on a daily basis, these are my clients. Like I don't just, here's your book, see you later, bye-bye. we're friends now. And we all get on these calls and we do these events, and we all are like, what the hell is everybody in the world thinking right now? What is everybody, what are most people doing? What are they doing? They're watching the news. Oh my God, they're still gossiping. They're watching this. None of it is helping them. None of them's, they're not reading books. They're not writing. They're not building anything. How can most people do this? So when I think of not most people, it's just the people who maybe you call them the people who woke up, now they're awake. Now they realize the time is so short. Eventually, the sand in the hourglass is going to be gone and the reaper's coming for you. And you're going to have 1 second to say, oh my God, did I do everything or not? And I just think that not most people really do take the shot. And they're the ones who have the good stories. It's every day, every business you create, every person you meet, every adventure you go on could be that story that you share on stage or in your book or something someday. And not most people realize that.
Wow. Awesome. Couldn't put it better myself.
I love the title of the podcast. That's great.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know we got a few minutes left here. If there's one last piece of advice you'd like to share with the audience.
Yeah, I would say that you use your story as your competitive advantage. I don't care what it is. If you went through divorce, if you went through some type of situation in your past, or if you had a great, business failure, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. Everything can be used to your advantage. The reason why is because now you're building common ground with those like-minded people. Someone out there can relate to your story. So if you use your story as your competitive advantage, you can always outposition and outmarket other people. And it doesn't mean it's going to be a part of a book or whatever. It's just talking about on a podcast or when you meet that person in the elevator or on that Zoom call. The goal here is to build relationships. The way you do that is to show people who you are, what you believe, what you went through. And the right people are going to hear that and say, I know what that person is going through. I know where they're coming from. Nobody cares about your life until they know what you went through, who you are as a person. And I guess a better way to put that is nobody cares about your life until you help them with their life. So you need to do two things. You need to help people. You need to give. And you also need to not hide from anybody or anything. You need to show people what you went through. So your story used properly can be the greatest asset, your greatest tool. So wherever you can, whenever you can, make sure people know about it. And the right people will latch onto it and want to do business with you, want to promote you, and they're going to care more.
Oh, awesome. Powerful. And I know we got to wrap things up here. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like we could probably keep going for another couple hours, but I wanted to ask before we hop off, we talked about your book a little bit, your new book, right? Mike's Inner Circle. What else do you have going on that you'd like to promote? I know you have a new Inner Circle program, right? And then where can people find you?
Yeah. So the program is mikesinnercircle.com. Go check it out. It's an alliance group where, you can work with people who think like I do. And there's people out there, patriots who want to work with other patriots, entrepreneurs who, want to work with other great entrepreneurs. So that's my group is mikesinnercircle.com. You can get a copy of my book for free. Also, you can go to Dreamstarters Publishing, check out some of the books, see a bunch of the clients that we've worked with, and start following a lot of these people we worked with. So Dreamstarters Publishing is another website. Rockstar's Dream Magazine, a company that I own, also is putting out its 5th issue. Rockstarsdream.com. There's that, and then there's a couple other things I'm putting out there, but I would have to say that what we're working on is a thing called Patriot Planes, private flights for people who want freedom in the sky. That's an investment that I've made in mobile home parks with Chris Rude, a guy who's part of Mike's Inner Circle. If you guys are out there looking to get your money to work for you, follow some of my clients that are doing amazing things. Like one of my clients was just at this event with Jorge Masvidal, and he got his book in the hands of Jorge Masvidal. His name's Daniel Joseph, doing big things in roofing. And so I would if you want to follow me on Instagram at the Dreamstarter and just check out some of the clients that we worked with and who we're working with now. They're all doing amazing, special things. So you get to get a feel of, when entrepreneurs take risks, what happens with them? You get to see people who are actually starting a book, finishing it. They must be more committed. So follow along with some of these people out there that are on my page. And I'm telling you, it just inspires you. If someone else can do it, what do they have that you don't? And the answer is, well, they just have maybe the courage to put their story out there. It's not they're better writers, or maybe they don't have a better story. It's, hey, I'm putting it out there and I'm going to be judged, but that's a beautiful thing. So if there's anything I would say is go on my Instagram, follow some of my clients, and you'll be inspired. I promise you.
Awesome. Yeah, guys, go ahead and make sure you follow Mike. I've been following him on Instagram, and that's, I loved his content, and I was like, I got to have this guy on here. So do it. Definitely a great follow. But just want to say thanks for being on today, Mike. This was a lot of fun. We'll have to have you back in the future. I'm sure there's other stuff we could talk about. And if you're still here, thank you for listening today. If you found value out of this episode, please share it with your friends, leave us an honest review on iTunes, or join the Not Most People community on Facebook and Instagram. The links will be in the show notes. So that's it. Thanks for listening. And always remember, don't be most people.